Hello, and welcome back to the Pretty Passionate Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Ruth, and today we are diving deep into Season 3, Episode 6 of House of the Dragon, Faceless Men. I'm going to start off the bat and let you guys know this was not my favorite episode of the season. Just putting it out there. I'm not trying to say anything about the showrunners or anything derogatory. I'm just saying, on all the episodes, this is a season where I feel like they have been literally cooking with grease every single episode. And this one, the timing, something was just not my favorite. I'd like to hear your thoughts on that. It was a little bit choppy for me, some of the running back and forth, whereas maybe last episode, going back and forth between all of the locations didn't feel like this. But enough about that. Let's get into a summary of what actually happened this episode. So, Faceless Men, that's an interesting title because there is a battle featured in the episode that I would have thought the episode might be named after. So it's another named battle, like the battle at Rooks Rest, the battle of the Gullet, the battle of the Bastard. So this one is known as the Butcher's Ball. So this is a highly anticipated episode, a highly anticipated battle. But the title of the episode is called Faceless Men. And as the episode unfolds, we come to learn, I think, why they chose such a title. I think it's because some of the most significant action that took place in this episode happened at the hands of faceless men or people who are not named characters or characters that we are following. They're not named characters in the show. They may be named characters in the book, but if you're just a show watcher, a lot of the most important and pivotal moments in the episode happen because of the actions of someone whose name we don't know or we don't know well at all. And also because of a decision Rhaenyra makes to try to quell the rebellion that's brewing in Tumbleton using essentially anonymous assassins, faceless men, to accomplish a task. Now, I was disappointed, I'm not going to lie, to realize that the episode did not actually include a single faceless man. There was no mention of the many-faced god that Arya Stark was so familiar with. Maybe there's someone who's practicing that art somewhere in King's Landing who's actually responsible for the murder of all these gold cloaks. I don't know. Maybe we'll find out. But either way, if you're confused about the title, that's why I think they chose it. Okay. So Kristen Cole gets the opening scene. His relentless pursuit of Lord Tully and the Winter Wolves leads to him basically being killed by a nameless archer. She has a name in the book. So I researched. Her name is Black Allie. And the remainder of his men get wiped out. I'll get into a little bit more of that. Am I guilty of celebrating the moment that he ended his ridiculous, misogynistic, narcissistic reign of terror on Westeros? Yeah, I'm guilty. But we'll talk more about that in a second. Rhaenyra remains awash in more troubles than solutions at her small council. The divide seems to always come to, are we going to use our nukes or are we going to respect the fact that doing so will cost the lives of some of your citizens? And these people are just as useless as her old small council. You have Sabbatha Frey and Torrin Manderley, who have joined recently the council. Also, you have Alan of Hull and Damon and Maester Orwyle and also Missaria, but nobody seems to be able to give her a good direction. Ultimately, I think that leaves her a little bit impotent. She tries to take some actions, and by the end of the episode, there's been movement on the chessboard, so to speak. But while she's hearing complaints on people suffering in the throne room, she gets a cut on her left pinky, just like Viserys did, which was the cause of his horrible illness, if you recall. And in Game of Thrones, Fire and Blood world, the Iron Throne is said to pass judgment on the people who sit it. So in book world, this is a very, very bad signs and portents. This is a very bad omen and spells that the Iron Throne is judging her as being inadequate to sit on the throne. Hugh and Ulf, they're just languishing in their assignment at Tumbleton. And Ulf shows that he stands, in my opinion, to be a greater potential threat to Rhaenyra and her plans than she realizes. I think Jace was right, not in his classicism, but in the fact that you can't just give dragons to random people because you don't know these people well enough. I think that's the core reason, not because he's lowborn, but because you don't know his character. He is not trustworthy enough to give great power. And he's complaining that he has a dragon, but he doesn't have anything else. He's not allowed to go to the tavern and show his buddies, his new lifestyle. And so he feels like he's not getting what he wanted in the deal. Meanwhile, Hugh's loyalties are actually split as well. Hugh was the more responsible of the pair, but his loyalties are split because remember, his wife, Kat, she's in Tumbleton. So he finds a way to abandon his post as well and try to get his wife unsuccessfully to leave the city with him. They're reunited. She is not impressed by his new status as a dragon lord. And it would seem that he knows a burning is coming, or a burning may be inevitable, and he's trying to spare her, but she'll have none of it. Alicent gets a serious warning from Rhaenyra that she is forcing her hand, essentially. Rhaenyra is letting her know, you're not being a good hostage. I let you guys walk outside. I let you kind of have the run of the Red Keep, but you tried to escape. And now you're making me look bad because you were caught by guards. So she lets them know that she's going to be confining them more stringently. Rhaenyra also learns the truth about Helena's condition in that conversation and why they were trying to escape in the first place, as well as the fact that Helena is a dreamer. This comes to her later when Alicent brings her intel on where Aemon is hiding that was revealed to Helena, and she put it in a tapestry. Ultimately, this leads Rhaenyra to try to extract a high price from Alicent to buy her freedom back, her and Helena's freedom back. She sends Alicent on an errand to kill Aemon at Harrenhal. Mysaria betrays Rhaenyra for what we know to be the first time, and also tries to kick dirt over her tracks by killing the only maid who probably knows the truth about just how much the Master of Whisperers knew about Helena's pregnancy. She decides, I think foolishly, to keep from Rhaenyra that she knew about the pregnancy. She also seems disgruntled during Rhaenyra's meeting with the small folk in the throne room. As they're listening to the complaints of the people of King's Landing, Rhaenyra doesn't have any responses, no answers that are going to satisfy anyone. She's blaming the high towers for the troubles that the people have, but they're like, lady, we came to you to fix the problems. You're the queen. And she's kind of proving herself to not have what it takes to rule and sort out these problems. Not because she's a woman and not because women are not fit to rule Westeros. I think comparing her to Viserys or even Aegon is apples to oranges at this point, because both of those kings enjoyed a full and capable King's Council. Aegon was allowed to F off to whatever brothel he wanted to with his buddies, and there were competent people in place to solve problems. Rhaenyra doesn't have that. So she's in that throne room listening to complaints, and she can't offer solutions. No money, no security. Speaking of problems that Rhaenyra is awash in, the Gold Cloaks officially resign. They run into Damon, who has gone back to the scene of the crime at the end of last episode, where 10 of his probably most loyal Gold Cloaks, the leaders of the Gold Cloaks, were brutally murdered and left there with a sign in blood that said "Feast for Traitors." Damon is in this room, probably very upset, and the remainder of the Gold Cloaks show up and hand him back their cloaks. They feel unsafe. They're like, hey, we're dying in great numbers. We'd rather basically have the freedom to go home to protect our families, and you can't promise us safety. So basically all the rubies and silks that you promised us when this all works out are of no value to us, because what we don't want to do is leave our children not only poor, which they currently are because they're not being paid, but also orphaned, which is valid. Damon learns that the issues with security in Flea Bottom are more than just a small rabble of disgruntled citizens, and that it's actually a widespread movement that is being fomented by the high towers for citizens of the city who are not interested in having Rhaenyra as a queen. In fact, they're not interested in any queen. Damon chooses to try to lure the murderer of the Gold Cloaks by going undercover as a Gold Cloak. Of course, this works, even though he had like barely concealed Targaryen hair out, but whatever. It works, and he manages to lure the man who sent the pigeon message to Ormin Hightower last episode, lure him into trying to kill him. He gets that guy cornered, tries to question him. He's not talking. He's just letting him know that this is not end with me. You may kill me, but you're not killing the movement, more or less, and we will never accept her as our queen. He kills him anyway. But that signals a bigger problem for Rhaenyra. And then, making matters worse, Damon runs into Ulf. Why is Ulf walking around the city? Because he doesn't listen. Like I said, this guy is going to be a problem. And they have a really contentious interaction where Damon is mistaking his authority and the imperative that he has from Rhaenyra and the strength of his conviction in his cause to support Rhaenyra. He is mistaking that as motivation for people like Ulf. Ulf has but few motivations, and many of them seem to be at the bottom of a beer mug. I just don't know what Damon is not understanding about this guy, but I guess he's just so high class. Damon has a very embarrassing interaction with Ulf. In front of all of these people, he slaps him for being insolent, which he was being, but I don't think this was a good move. Steps on him and threatens him about disobeying orders. Yeesh. I don't think that's going to go well, especially because they make it a point for us to see that one of the little birds who was working with the rebellion against Rhaenyra witnesses this interaction and then runs off to go tell somebody. Don't know who, but think about it. If Ormin gets word that Ulf, a dragon rider, is being treated this way, what do we think is going to happen? Nothing good. Okay. Alan of Hull, who pledged the remainder of Valyrian forces at that small council meeting, he goes to his dad, to Lord Corless, who is busy hunting down triarchy pirates and make sure that this is okay, basically. And during this interaction, they have a critical conversation about Alan's legitimacy that I feel like Alan was cooking. He put Corless in his place about continuing to be angry with Rhaenyra that she did not immediately legitimize his sons. He tells his father, you took like my whole life to get to this point where you wanted to give me legitimacy. You can't necessarily crucify her for taking a few days, a few months, or whatever. The lady never said no, is my argument against Corless's reaction, that he's being impetuous and he's having a tantrum. And although I do understand his perspective that he gives and gives and gives, and he probably is one of, if not, besides Damon, like one of Rhaenyra's most loyal right-hand people. He's the hand of the queen for a reason, but he's having a tantrum. His son calls him out. And it's a great scene. Alan then goes off to find Baela to update her, I guess. I don't know. She seems like she's falling asleep. She's tired. She's been working tirelessly to try to locate Vagar. And they have a moment, okay? Baela's like, you're super dutiful. She's looking to blow off some steam. And I guess, yeah, they hook up. We definitely see that they share a kiss. And camera pans off, but we are left to our imagination about what happened between these two lonely, tired souls. Now, I know what you're thinking, incest, but I ship it. I ship Baela being with either brother, not gonna lie. I do think she had more on-screen chemistry with Adam, because their interactions, like they're playful, they're a little flirty. I think the two actors' chemistry, you can tell where they're going with the storyline. I could tell the last conversation they had that this was probably where the story would go. But yeah, whatever. They go together real bad now, and I love it. Okay. Later, at the same camp where Corless was, we see that they're celebrating their victory, killing all these triarchy pirates, stringing them up to the trees to, I guess, show them a lesson. And Corless's camp is attacked by Hightower men. And it would seem that Corless has been murdered, or I don't know. He's just so valuable. I'm not going to call it murdered. They don't show us. For me, in general, when it comes to these George R.R. Martin world of spin-off shows, unless they show me the person unalived, I'm not believing it. I want to see the body before I believe that he has truly been killed. The other aspect of that is that Ormin Hightower actually said something very complimentary about Lord Corless that leads me to consider the possibility that they may take him hostage. He actually, like, of all the people that he has absolutely no respect for, Lord Corless is someone he has respect for his random reasons. So I'm thinking maybe he'll let him live. I hope so, because I really do like Lord Corless. And I also just, selfishly don't want one of the few Black characters on the show to get killed. Like, come on. Back over at Rooks Rest, the new reluctant trio of Tywin Lannister, Larys Strong, and King Aegon Targaryen, they are getting rid of evidence of the man that Aegon killed when he discovered his identity by finding his crown last week. Brutal but necessary. I think that Aegon had to get rid of this guy, but I feel like he enjoyed it a little too much. Anyway, there's an interesting conversation that takes place here where Aegon seemingly is testing Tywin to see if he's going to tell him the truth. They're trying to decide if they should sail off to Essos, but Tywin Lannister would rather they return to the Casterly Rock, which is the Lannister seat of power. Larys is like, oh, how convenient. You want the king to go to your home, and disagrees with this plan. And he wants to stick with their original plan to sail away to Essos and wait this whole thing out. Ultimately, Aegon quizzes Tywin and is like, was I a good king? And Tywin does a lot of verbal acrobatics to avoid telling him the truth, which is, no, you were not a good king. And all of the things that Larys nakedly told him. And it's interesting because Aegon sides with Larys. He says, we're going to Essos then. And I wonder if that's not a sign, as much of a sign as we're going to get, that some of what Larys said, it's sunk in with Aegon. It's landing, that he's picking up on what Larys was trying to tell him, that he wasn't a good king and he wasn't a good man and he pissed away good opportunities in his life. It would seem so. Rhaenyra, still isolated and somehow surviving on berries and I guess sheep meat, chilling in her cave when she spots Moondancer and Sea Smoke patrolling with Baela and Adam, obviously riding them. They don't show us anymore, but later we learn that she actually mounted Sheepstealer and tried to go reach Baela, I guess, to talk to her. I mean, at the end of the day, she's got to be lonely. She's got no one to talk to. This doesn't go over so well with Jane of Arryn. She's not happy about it and summons Rhaenyra to the Vale, where we do get a really cool view, or I guess audio cue, that some enemy of Jane Arryn, has just recently exited the Moon Door. If you recall the Moon Door, where the Arryns say bye-bye to their enemies. It's just like a trap door at the top of the Eyrie that just lets people fly. So someone was flying in the middle of this scene where they summon Rhaenyra to the room and Jane Arryn slaps the dog piss out of a Targaryen princess. A bold move, one might say, except this is a Targaryen princess who kind of can't go home. Ultimately, she threatens Rhaenyra, if you pull that again, the whole coming out of hiding and going after your sister, anything that puts me in jeopardy, that'll be the end of you. So okay. Alice Rivers, she is still tending to Eamon. And last week I was like, what is her goal? What is her plan? I know she wanted Harrenhal, but what else? Well, she tells us what else. She is convincing Eamon, stroking his ego and convincing him that his missing dragon is actually not Vagar rejecting him as a warrior, as a person, or a dragon rider, but rather that he should consider the possibility that Vagar has left because she doesn't want to be the reason his location is given up. She wants to leave, but to protect him. Because truthfully, yeah, wherever Vagar is, you're going to assume Eamon is there because that's the dragon bond. But I guess she's giving Vagar more agency than that. And I don't dislike this explanation. At the end of the day, Vagar is a very experienced, very intuitive, intelligent, and independently thinking dragon. Remember, Eamon doesn't control Vagar like that. When she wanted to have a bite of Lucerys and Arax, he couldn't control her. So yeah, that's actually an interesting and plausible explanation for Vagar's absence. Alice Rivers later makes her desires clear. She is trying to convince Eamon not to leave because he's like, well, I'm going to get on a horse and go find my dragon. She's like, don't leave. Reveals a clutch of dragon eggs that have been kept at Harrenhal and her plans for those eggs. For him to stay there with her, make dragon riding babies, and for him to become a dragon lord in his own right. Another thing that the internet is abuzz about, which I wondered about during the episode, is that these are plausibly the eggs, the eggs that were stolen, that later become stolen eggs that end up in the possession of one Daenerys Targaryen. Fascinating stuff, like 8 generations later, I believe. So yeah, it was really cool to see those eggs, those petrified dragon eggs, but she's got plans. I don't know what those plans are, but the eggs are warm. Eamon makes note of the fact that the egg is warm. When she puts it in his hands, she puts her blood on it. I'm like, ooh, this Alice Rivers and all that, Harrenhal haunted witch magic. Is she going to do something with blood, or is it the mixing of the blood with the old gods and the Valyrian gods that she really has her eye on? A little fire, and I don't know. Sir Gawain, he makes it to Templeton somehow. He makes a journey that will interestingly take Rhaenyra's forces 2 weeks. Took him maybe a day or two to wind up in Templeton from where he left Sir Kristen. And he has a history with Ormin. He doesn't buy into his plan to put Darren on the throne. He sees it as completely selfish and a way for Ormin to place himself closer to power, period. Darren, we get to see a little bit more of his personality because it looks like at some point Gawain served as a go-between, mediator, even a protector of Darren from Ormin. And Darren is really disappointed when Gawain makes it clear that he plans to return to Old Town. He's second in line and he feels like he needs to go attend to his family's seat of power since he's been away so long. Ormin also makes some really tasteless, homophobic, crude jokes, implying that he's aware that Gawain enjoys the company of men. So it's clear that Gawain is no fan of Ormin Hightower. Later on in the episode, however, Sir Gawain gets to have the upper hand when some would-be Baratheon air quotes, assassins arrive at Templeton to greet the King Darren that they say they're going to swear fealty to on behalf of Lord Boros Baratheon. This is a clever ruse, and Gawain sees right through it, takes them all out immediately because he recognized it, and Ormin's reaction to this incident is to become disabled by the retching he's doing off in a corner somewhere. So we know that his sense of smell being a weakness is something that Rhaenyra used to great effect in this scene. And I love it. I love seeing a misogynistic jerk who was calling Rhaenyra too squeamish because she's a woman to actually burn Templeton is now being the definition of squeamish because of a little poo on boots and some blood. Great stuff. Great scene. Oh, that's all the news that fit to print on what happens in the episode. That closing scene was Lord Corless being killed or kidnapped. So let's get a little bit into my pretty perspective on this episode regarding our boy, Sir Kristen. Ha! You thought I was going to devote 2 sentences to the departure of my least favorite character in the whole show? Yeah, no. The opening scene, Sir Kristen Cole stalking the Riverman and the Winter Wolves. Yeah, he gets what he asked for. This tactical move was so brilliant on the part of the Rivermen and the Winter Wolves. They basically surprise what's left of Sir Kristen Cole's army by laying a lot of Rivermen in a field as if they're dead and luring them to the dead center of the field when the men who are alive then stage an attack that is somewhat effective. That's the only thing. It was like a great idea, but it wasn't that effective. Anyway, they were completely surprised. Sir Kristen loses a significant number of men. I mean, he didn't have that many to begin with. But I was so annoyed by how well Sir Kristen was doing in this battle. I mean, they remind us that he's just like a fighting brute, that he will take you out with his bare knuckles if he has to. He gets his hands on a Morning Star, I think. Not sure exactly what weapon this is. And I don't plan to look it up because it's not important to me. But if you do know and you care, then you can drop a kind comment and correction and let me know. I did not want Sir Kristen to survive this fight. When he did, I was so annoyed because I was like, they better not play in my face and let this guy live another episode. Like, are you positioning him to be John Wick? He's so annoying. Get rid of him. But what I really loved was the end. It paid off. My patience, our patience paid off. He ultimately survives that initial sneak attack, only to find himself completely flanked by Winter Wolves and Rivermen. And their numbers are just so overwhelming. He's got but a few people. He knows he's never going to survive this. Now, he did something surprising where in an attempt, I guess, to not get the rest of his men killed, he volunteers as tribute to fight Lord Tully and the senior Winter Wolf in a 2-on-1 battle that I guess would be more fair to him than having his men wiped out. Okay, noble for the crumb of nobility that it is to still have your men in this position at all, since you should have given up chasing the Rivermen a long time ago. But okay, in this last moment, he's willing to sacrifice himself and have that one last heroic battle that he was telling Sir Gawain about, that he hoped that they would sing songs about, that he pulls out that dirty little favorite, that little hanky with the A on it that Alicent gave him, and he wraps it around the pommel of his sword like he's getting ready to have this epic battle where he will possibly slay one or maybe both, but likely die. And then he's taken out. Is 1 arrow to the torso and then 2 more in rapid succession to end his life in such a glorious way. Who is the archer we have to thank for this? Someone we have not officially met on the show before. As I mentioned in my research, I did come across the name of this wonderful woman, Black Allie. We don't know anything about her in the show. And what I love about this moment and what other viewers have pointed out, and I share in the joy of pointing out, is that this pompous jerk, this misogynist, this hero, this self-styled greatest warrior of Westeros has drawn his last breath at the hands of a woman who is not of import, not great enough import. In the manner of his death, that songs will be sung about him. He died not wielding his sword, but taken out by a woman from afar. It's exactly the kind of death that a character like Sir Kristen Cole, a misogynist, a narcissist, deserve. He was willing to put his men's life at risk to get the hero's death that he so craved so that one day Alicent might hear songs about him. Meanwhile, by the way, Alicent is back in King's Landing fighting for her own life, not thinking 1 second about Dusty Sir Kristen. He's so ridiculous. And you know what? He doesn't even care about her. He doesn't love her as a person because he doesn't see women as people. He sees women as a mere accessory to his little night story. You know, they're just a part of the whole thing. Trimmings, like when he offered the heir to the Iron Throne to run off with him to farm oranges and cinnamon or whatever. Women are not respected, loving partners in his world. They are accessories to his story. So yeah, he did not get the death that a fighter of his caliber you think they might get. He was a dishonorable knight. He broke his vows, by the way, sleeping with the people that he was sleeping with, and didn't seem to feel any real remorse about that, but rather turned that remorse into anger toward Rhaenyra for making him dishonor his vows and then not, I guess, marrying him. Like, what was she supposed to do about that? So he made Rhaenyra his little monster, and then he completely deified Alicent, helped her carry out horrible things in the name of putting someone on the throne who was a horrific king, blindly doing what he could to take Rhaenyra down. So bye, Sir Kristen. Bye-bye. No one will mourn you. There will be no songs sung about you. Alicent would not hear such songs if they did exist. We know they won't. And even if she heard them, we know that Alicent probably would not give a single rat in King's Landing about his death. I actually posted about this on TikTok, and I mentioned that Sir Kristen's death is eerily similar to that of Jacaerys Velaryon. I don't think we have to guess why. In my opinion, both men did things that they should not have been doing. And in particular, they stole valor. They ended up with a very pitiable death. Silent arrows, anonymous archer for the most part. And I think that is the writer's rebuke on the actions that these men took to get themselves to that position. Jace locking his mother away and undermining her authority to go and seek glory in the Battle of the Gullet. Remember that speech he had given to Baela to get her to join him, that they were going to have this glorious, and probably in the back of Jace's mind was cementing his own legitimacy, knowing that he is technically a strong bastard, right? So he went on a selfish journey for his own stolen valor. And Sir Kristen is on a selfish journey seeking valor he does not deserve. So it fits that they died the same way. And we will leave it at that. And although I have nothing against Jace, broadly speaking, I think that the writers are trying to make a point here. On to main character energy. Main character energy this episode goes to my boy, Alan of Hall. This week, he showed us exactly why he deserves to be where he is, seated at the right hand of the Queen of the Seven Kingdoms, giving out sage advice. At this point, he has advised her wisely, not once, not twice, but 3 times, right? I know 2 weeks is not my cup of tea when it comes to taking Templeton down. If you saw last week's episode, then you know that I am very much in favor of Rhaenyra nuking the place completely clear. Alan advises her to practice restraint regarding Templeton, whether I agree with him or not. He also proposed that the remainder of the Velaryon host serve as city security while they sort out what's going on with the High Towers. Good advice. And he also put his father in his place, right? About the whole she refuses to legitimize y'all. Sir, is he like, I don't know how old he is on the show. Let's say he is a good 26 years old. I don't know. He could be older. Lord Corless waited however many years for that grown man to be alive on this earth, knowing he was there, knowing where he lived with his brother, never legitimized him. All of a sudden you're in a rush because your legacy is in jeopardy. That's all there is to it. We know for a fact, and I'm sure Alan knows it in his chest, that if Jacaerys or Lucerys were still alive, he would not be so eager to legitimize these 2 bastard boys that he knew about all along. I love Lord Corless, but these are facts. Alan was not hesitant to point that out to him. And you would think that he would naturally side with his father on this, but I love how unafraid he was to call him out on his own hypocrisy. Like, sir, I led a rough life. I had a rough and poor childhood, and here you come. Because your heirs that you selected after Laenor disappeared are dead. That's why you suddenly remember my name. I love that they have a relationship now. I love that they're past a lot of their past, but he deserved to hear that. And the last reason why Alan of Hull was giving main character energy this episode is because of him getting it on with Bela at long last. That man, he's dutiful. He's loyal. I mean, Bela sees it. It makes him attractive. I like a man in uniform doing his duty. Who doesn't? So yeah, I appreciate that he did what he was supposed to do. He was honorable throughout the episode. He made good decisions. He advised everyone in his path correctly. And then he claimed his reward. Good for you, Alan of Hull. Hopefully someday soon, Alan Velaryon. Who knows? We don't know what's going to happen to Lord Corless. So who knows if that'll ever happen. I do have to give a main character energy honorable mention to my boy, Damon Targaryen, who continues to slay us with the one-liners. This is simply a humor thing. He manages to steal so many scenes that he is in. Obviously, the character is being portrayed by a fabulous actor. Damon Targaryen in the Queen's Council, after Torrin Manderley makes a couple of snide remarks about dragons being imprecise weapons of war, he hurls his goblet at his head, purposely misses by a hair, and says that he refuses, I'll hear no more from those whose greatest battle has been with their own indigestion. Freaking Damon Targaryen. He cracks me up. And what he's saying is true though, right? He's saying, you know nothing of war. You've sat in your riches and enjoyed all the peace that has been brought to you. You've never picked up a sword and gone to war. Side note, that's also what makes Alan of Hull's advice probably weigh a little bit more to Rhaenyra in that scene, because Alan has been to war. And right after Damon made that comment, Alan chimes in with his advice to practice further restraint and rely on the Velaryon forces. Damon doesn't say anything. You can tell he doesn't agree with this, but he doesn't challenge Alan in the way that he does Torrin. That said, I still love Damon. He's one of my favorite characters in the show. No one's going to make me hate him, no matter how many people he puts on his murder cloak and takes out, no matter how many stupid decisions he makes, like lying to his wife about who Sheep Stealer's rider is. I gotta say, not his finest hour in terms of plans, but it does give him dad points. So on to our final diagnosis for this so-so but informative episode. Like I said, it wasn't my favorite episode, and I'm not saying it was bad. It's just maybe the pacing was a little off for me. On second watch, I liked it a little bit better. But my final diagnosis for this episode is that Rhaenyra is still wasting precious time, still concerned about underlying legitimacy, being liked or loved by the people. She wants everybody to like her. You cannot be a ruler and have everyone like you. It's just not possible. And she needs to ask herself one critical question. Are the needs of the key players in this war being met? Chief on my brain, Ulf, Hugh. Are their needs being met? Damon at this point. Missaria. Are people's needs being met who you are critically dependent on to win? Just like Damon did with Ulf, she's confusing her mandate, her passion to sit the Iron Throne and take her rightful place as Viserys' heir. That cause, she is confusing that with meeting the needs of the people around her. Yes, it's a righteous cause. Yes, the people who have sworn fealty to you, who have gathered their banners for you, believe in your cause, but that belief is not enough to fill their bellies. That belief is not enough to quell their concerns when there is no police in the streets of King's Landing now. That belief is enough to cause rebellion to boil over. I think she and Damon are definitely making those critical mistakes, which only highborn people could possibly do, right? And they need to wake up and find a way to meet these people's basic needs. Like, would it be crazy to, I don't know, have Ulf bring the tavern to the Red Keep? Like, literally, would it be crazy to invite some of those tavern folk up? I mean, they don't have to have an audience with the queen. I'm not losing my mind here, but I'm just thinking outside the box. All this guy wants is a beer with his friends. And I'm not saying he's honorable. I'm not saying I trust him, but I am saying that the small need that Ulf has is meetable. She doesn't have a lot, Rhaenyra, right? She doesn't have resources in terms of money. She doesn't have police. She doesn't have so much right now. But what she does have is the ability to invite a tavern full of people to come up to a ballroom that nobody's using up at the Red Keep and enjoy themselves for an evening. Just like 1 or 2 episodes ago when Ulf came to Rhaenyra with a request on behalf of a couple of his tavern buddies, and he asked her, could you pardon a parking ticket or something? There was a couple of offenses that a couple of his buddies were like, hey, now that you're in with the queen, can you get these offenses pardoned for me? And she kind of looks at him, he has 3 heads, and completely dismisses his request and is almost angry with him for making the request. And I'm like, lady, that would have been a teeny tiny small win. That would have been a small win that you could hand this man that would possibly win him, that would possibly win more loyalty from him. Rhaenyra is missing that key thing. There's like entire psychological books written about how leaders can win people over, because you're not going to win people over with your mandate to be Viserys' heir. You're going to win people over by meeting their needs. Tossing out a few benevolent rutabagas and crops in the middle of King's Landing was a start. But that's not the end point. And no, she does not have solutions to her problems. So that's why I think she needs to start thinking creatively and meeting people's needs. Hugh doesn't have anywhere to live. Well, he's a knight of your realm, granted obviously a low-ranking knight. Why don't you let him stay with you in the Red Keep? Just a crazy thought. Because what will that do? It'll put one of your knights, also a dragon rider, very close to you, give him shelter and meet his needs, give his wife a reason to join him because she's worried about safety and security. Well, if he's like, we are actually staying in the castle right now until we can be awarded a home for my service, maybe that would be more enticing to her. And then you would have Hugh under your roof with his wife, happier than he is right now, walking away from his wife in Tumbleton, who refuses to leave its safety. I don't know why they're too thick to see that. I guess it's just a matter of being that highborn. But even Aegon, as terrible of a king as he was, at some point when he was in the throne room, he gave consideration to the needs of his people. He actually heard what they were asking him and made feeble, maybe ineffectual, but visible attempts to solve their problems. And remember, if you do remember in that scene, it went over well with the people who were standing there. They were like, thank you, gracious king, pretty much. Even though, his hand, who was Otto Hightower at the time, was kind of like, you can't really do that. That's not really possible. And kind of advising him not to keep giving in to these people's needs. He felt a pull to meet people's needs because that's what a good leader does. That's thing one where Rhaenyra is failing, to meet the needs of the most important people around you who you need. They're mission critical. Number two, she is failing to utilize the resources she has at her disposal. She has 6 dragons at her disposal. Last time I did the dragon math. Use them. You're so concerned about image, but you also have to understand that image will be the least important thing when you are removed from that throne by the rebellion that Ormin is successfully seeding all around you. You don't have security. You don't have a police force at all now. You're waiting on Velaryons to come and shore up your city watch. We know those Velaryons ain't gonna make it. They were in the woods celebrating their victory against the Triarchy and got wiped out. I don't think that a big host of those men immediately returned with Alan when he went back to King's Landing. I think they were probably going to head over there. Rhaenyra made the mistake of telegraphing her plans in a room full of small folk. No doubt this got back to the Hightowers, who decided to snuff out any help she might get reestablishing law and order in the city. It's basically a situation where all of her non-dragon options are collapsing in real time around her. I admire her trying not to just slash and burn, right? It was good to try. You tried to send some Baratheon imposters to kill Darren and snuff out this rebellion. Failed. You tried to have the City Watch reestablished with the remainder of the Velaryon host. Failed, or seemingly failed. We'll see if I'm right on that next episode. Now you're trying to send Alicent to kill her own son up in Harrenhal. Something tells me that that's going to fail. Not just because Aemond has Alice Rivers on his side now. Okay, he's got a little witchy poo for a boo right now. Do I think Alicent is cunning enough to get around her? No. Not only that, but it's one thing for a mother to step aside and stand out of the way when you are about to take the head of her horrible son, Aegon. She knows he's a monster. She knows he's a terrible king. She steps to the side to allow Rhaenyra permission to kill him. Okay, that's one thing. It is quite another to have her do it with her own hand. I'm not saying this was too horrible of a request. I think Alicent was a little excessively judgy talking about, oh, Rhaenyra, see, I told you this is what you would become. Like, ma'am, you did force her hand with that one. You were a hostage. You were worried about Helena's baby. But until that point, Rhaenyra had not given you evidence that she would be willing to kill a baby to maintain her seat, especially given that she and Rhaenyra have had direct conversations clearing up that whole blood and cheese mess. Like, Alicent should not be making actions that are going to force Rhaenyra's hand toward greater violence and greater restriction towards her. So I don't feel bad for her that she's been sent on this mission. Let's not make that mistake. That's not what I'm saying, but I'm saying I think she will fail. Okay. And then what is Rhaenyra's other move? She's counting on Mysaria, who is clearly not advising her in her best interest with regard to Helena's pregnancy, with regard to the small folk continuing to prioritize the people of Tumbleton. Like, give me a freaking break, Mysaria. Even you are securing what's in your best interest, keeping yourself in Alicent Hightower's good graces by not revealing Helena's secret to Rhaenyra like you should have. You, who are dressing in fancier and fancier outfits every episode, you know? She no longer stands out looking like the help in the Red Keep. She's dressing in her beautiful robes and styling her hair, and she's having maids killed to cover her tracks. So Mysaria is not somebody Rhaenyra should be trusting. I hate that she's completely blinded to that, probably because Mysaria is sharing her bed, but it's like all the tools you have in your toolbox are ineffective. Even accounting for the fact that you don't 100% trust Damon's judgment on all things, he is right. All you have is strength. You need to move from a position of strength. She even recognizes this weakness when she addresses the fact that Baros Baratheon ignored her summoning him. He went to go fight, I don't know, some other rebellion near his home in Storm's End, instead of coming to King's Landing when you were summoned by the Queen herself. That is disrespect. I don't think it is her obligation to put up with that kind of disrespect. And if it requires a little dragon fire to get the lords and ladies of Westeros in formation, then that's what it takes, baby. If you gotta go and have Vermithor post up at Storm's End to let Lord Baros know that business is meant and that you will turn Storm's End into Harrenhal if he wants to F around and find out, that's what it's gonna take. Or maybe just burn it. I mean, I don't know how many people live in Storm's End, but burn it down. Burn it down and let it be an example of what you are willing to do to people who will cross you, to lords who see themselves as above picking a side. We know Baros Baratheon is just going to side with whoever wins. That's what he's trying to do. He's trying to play the fence. He's not rushing to answer Ormin Hightower's summoning or letters or anything, and he's not rushing to Rhaenyra's request to come to King's Landing. So he's just going to try and see who wins when they duke it out and side with that person when the ashes are settled. And that kind of disrespect should be met with unrelenting strength, which will shut a lot of people up. And if she burns Tumbleton to the ground because she doesn't like what they're doing over there, what do you think will happen in King's Landing? They will fall in line. They will fall in line because they're scared, because they have a reason to fear. She's got that Targaryen in her. She's got a little bit of Maegor in her. She's worried about them calling her Maegor. She's worried about them perceiving her as Maegor. Who cares? If you don't get these people in line and get them scared of you soon, you will be irrelevant because you will be removed from the throne just as quickly as you got to it. You won't even have time to die from that little nick on your finger because you will be kicked off the throne if you do not take action. Burn them all. I maintain my stance. I'm an unapologetic dragon user. You know, there is something about projecting strength in a situation when you are extremely weak. That's all I'm saying. With Rhaenyra, I think she is losing power in a manner of death by 1,000 cuts. It's slowly leaving her with the disrespect from the lords, with the people killing cops. She's losing control over everything. And by the time she probably wakes up and decides to do something, it may be too late. Like, I'm waiting with bated breath for next episode because I really want her to burn Tumbleton to the ground. I really do. I'm not kidding. I will shed no tears. I know Kat is there. I know there's a lot of innocence there, but needs must. Sometimes horrible things have to be done to end a war. I'm just saying, maybe it's my military background showing, but I do believe that sometimes bad things have to happen in war in order for the greater good to prevail, in order to stop a bigger bad from happening. And sometimes the enemy of good is better. We say this in plastic surgery all the time. Rhaenyra's got no good options in front of her. I agree with her about this. But my final diagnosis is that a decision must be made. Sometimes in the operating room, you don't have great options, but what isn't an option is to do nothing. You got to take the information that you have before you, analyze the situation, and make a decision about what to do next. This persistent stalling that she is doing while she is holding the nuclear codes is going to get her removed from that throne. And let's be clear, I'm not calling Rhaenyra a bad queen. I think she walked into a complete show, right? But she is making the mistake of trying to apply what Viserys would do to situations. Viserys was a peacetime king. Okay. You cannot apply what a peacetime president or a peacetime king has done. When you are at war, ma'am, action, decisive, probably violent action must be taken by Rhaenyra. She's exhausted all of the non-burning options at this point. Decisive action must be taken by Rhaenyra, or we're going to watch her fumble the biggest lead in 2026 since the Spurs lost a 29-point lead to the Knicks in Game 4 of the NBA Finals. That's my final diagnosis, and I'm sticking to it. All right, folks, that is it for this episode. I have gone on long enough about what a terrible job I think Rhaenyra is doing ruling the Iron Throne. But what I hope is obvious after I've shared my many, many thoughts on this episode and this season is that this is a show I am very passionate about. I hope that you enjoyed this episode. I hope that you like and subscribe to the podcast, subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you enjoy the video version of this, we're available wherever you stream your podcast. Share a link with a friend who you think might enjoy these discussions. Stay pretty, stay passionate, and I will see you next week. Bye.